Hello and welcome to Riverland Women, the podcast which celebrates the amazing achievements and inspiring stories of women across South Australia's Riverland. I'm your host, Kerry Lush from the podcast station. I'm a freelance writer, podcast host and coach, and I'm a former ABC radio broadcaster. Join me each week as we meet some of the extraordinary women who call this region home. This is Riverland Women. In this episode, we meet Hayley Pokorzynski. She's the face and the orange hair behind Zynski Bakes in Renmark. In the past few years, she's turned her accidental side hustle into her full-time job. Hayley's macarons and baked goods are now making a name for themselves across South Australia and beyond. But it hasn't been without its challenges. We'll hear more about those soon. But first up, I asked her, who is Hayley?
I always think of myself as someone who is bright, loud, colourful, and just really likes to enjoy everything that I do. I like loud music, I like being social, I like baking, luckily, and I just love being around people. It's just my vibe, makes me happy and lights me up.
How did you end up in the Riverland?
So, grew up in Melbourne. I was western suburbs Melbourne my entire schooling life. Then it was a deal with my dad. I had to go to uni. That was the break, and I didn't really enjoy school towards the end. So like my year 12 subjects were art, metalwork, anything that didn't really involve anything too stressful. And I decided then, well, if I have to go to uni, I'll go and do art. So I went off to Bendigo and did my Bachelor of Visual Arts Graphic Design. Then realised that industry was a bit tricky at that time to actually earn money in. So I decided then, I'll stay at uni for another year and do my Diploma of Education because teaching seemed like something that could be okay. And at the time was not as stressful to get into. So I started doing that. Halfway through my teaching year, I'd picked up a job already for the following year. And I worked at a small reception to 12 school in the country. And I loved it, but towards the end of it, there was just a staff member that was harassing me, bullying me, and I hated going to work every single day. So I started to apply for jobs like all over because I had just met Luke, my husband now, and we were like, yep, we can go wherever, it doesn't matter, we have nothing tying us down. So I got a phone call from Bevan Brooks, who was the Glossop High School principal at the time. I literally laughed at him when he said Riverland, never heard of it, and hung up, thought it was a joke. And then my husband was like, ring him back, like, that was pretty rude. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, fair enough. So rang the school back and got on to another person who told me more about the school and what the Riverland was like. And we were like, we like skiing, we like river, but we had only ever seen the Echuca life of river, which is not as beautiful as what we have here. Came up for the weekend, met the school, met the staff. Next day, rang him back, said, yep, take the job. And it was at the time where they gave you a package. So they paid for you to move across. We had a government house, so very cheap rent. And yeah, we moved and it's been now, I think, 13 years here.
And so Luke managed to find a job pretty quickly as well?
Yeah, so Luke at the time was in the mines and studying to be a teacher at the time as well. So he just changed his course to online. Struggled with that a bit because he needed the support and someone to talk to. He's a person-to-person kind of person. So luckily enough, Mildura Latrobe were running the course. So he drove down and finished off the course, and then over holidays would do massive intensives in Melbourne to catch up to get his credits so he could be a teacher. And then he fell into a job straight away too at Renmark North Primary.
So what were you teaching at Glossop?
Glossop, I was arts, like visual arts and graphic design. So at the time when I moved here, graphic design, media arts wasn't a thing. Photoshop, all that wasn't taught just yet. So it was just the perfect timing for me to kind of walk into the school and slowly start to create a program that was teaching kids how to use Photoshop, Illustrator, and all those things basically to become a graphic designer.
And then what though? We're not sitting in a classroom at the moment. We're not in a school setting. What happened?
So I love teaching. I love kids. I love staff. It got to the point, however, where you just lose who you are in a school. There are so many boxes that you need to tick there are so many other elements that you lose your passion straight away, because all you have to do, it's not so much about the kids, the results, it's about all the other things that don't even matter. And it's also hard to find a place to grow in a school setting. So whilst happy teaching, doing my thing, if I wanted to progress into leadership or anything like that, it's very limited in the arts. And if someone who has been in that position longer than you, they're always going to win that over you. So there's nowhere really to grow. Once you're in, and you kind of just fall into the system and lose a little bit who you are, and a little bit of your passion kind of sadly goes. Yeah, it was sad. I did not want to leave, but something else lit me up a lot more, and that was obviously making my macarons.
And how did that all come about?
So I just had Hazel, and that stock standard, so she's my daughter, so that stock standard, have a baby, then have a side hustle. So I had that, like what everyone else has. And I just started making cookies and macarons for my sister's hens party show. And then Nicole from Pure Skin, she's the one that pretty much started all this. I was seeing her getting my eyebrows waxed, and she saw my cookies on my Facebook and was like, oh, can you make some for the salon? I was like, okay. So I went home, she ordered 200 straight away, and I was like, oh my, I've only ever made like 30 cookies in my life. So it took me like 2 weeks to make them, got it done, and then realised other people started to see it and started to ask me questions and started to start orders from me. So I was like, okay, yep, I can do this. I'm on maternity leave, it's fine. And slowly built up my socials and built up my business. And I guess it was lucky that I was a graphic designer, so it was easy for me to start strong with a brand and have a recognisable logo, all those things.
That was how it simply started, just 5 years ago or so, I suppose.
Yep, that's exactly how it started. It just was something different to what I was doing, and it just got busier and busier and busier. Not to say there wasn't struggles in there, like had to eventually go back to work. So I was working, I had a newborn, like a baby, and I was up until some nights 4 a.m. just trying to get orders out. My husband sometimes found me on the floor crying at like 3 a.m. because I'd taken on too much, and I can't say no. So chronic people pleaser I am. So I'd work so hard to get everything done, and I'm also a perfectionist. So it had to be perfect. And our house slowly became a sea of cookies and macarons everywhere. Like, it was crazy. So that's when my husband suggested that I moved out, like with my business.
Not moved out altogether. How did you work it all in with school? Like, at what point did you go, no, I've got to choose?
So school were very flexible, as in they did work with me to try to provide me the best part-time days and things like that. And they knew that my business at the time wasn't really a conflict of interest, so they were okay that I was doing that. And then I just kept getting busier and busier, and I hated going to work, like school. And I was like, oh, alrighty, so let's work out how I can make this business financially viable so I don't have to go to work anymore. And another friend of mine joked and said, how funny would it be when teaching becomes your side hustle and your macarons and cookies are your business? I laughed, thought it was a joke, but that's exactly how it happened. So I started to work on my off days from teaching in my shop, baking. I got another junior on, so she was also there to help me as well, because I started to get a lot busier. And then it got to the point where I started working with an accountant who basically supported me in learning how much I needed in order to quit my full-time job. And it was about 2 years of part-time work at school until I said to them, I'm not coming back next year.
Have you kept up your registration and all of that sort of stuff, or is it no to teaching forever?
So I did not renew my registration because I knew I would fall. If I had a stressful week, I will go, okay, I'm going back. I'm TRT and I'm going back. And don't get me wrong, I still think about it once a week, every now and then, going, oh, maybe I should just renew my registration, because obviously times at the moment aren't what they were when I first started my business. It was a lot easier. People had a lot more money. I had a lot more money. But I'm just holding off. In my head, the stupid thing is I see that as a massive failure. I see that as going backwards, and it's not the case at all, and I shouldn't think like that. But to me, walking back through those doors, my head won't be held high. And that honestly really does upset me. So I'm just trying to hustle and hustle. But look, next year, if things are still heading this way, I might look at returning at least for 1 day a week, because I have that, and that was always the safety plan and the backfall. And I'm blessed enough in teaching that it's not a bad job and it's easy to go back to.
Zynski Bakes has evolved quite a bit from your home kitchen. You're now onto your second premises, but also what you're providing has evolved over time as well. How did that all come about?
So we first obviously started with cookies and then macarons. I just loved making macarons, and I used to take them into work all the time. And again, it was something that no one else was doing. Everyone's doing cookies, everyone's doing cupcakes, everyone does cakes. And that's totally fine, because everyone's different and they're all doing their job. Like, they're all just working out what they want to do, and that's awesome. So I wanted something a little bit different, and macarons are a hard thing to get right. And luckily for me, with years and years of working on them, I've got that right, and now we can make massive quantities of them. So I really wanted to just stick to that. It's hard for me to stay in my head and just say, okay, this is your goal, is macarons wholesale worldwide, that is your goal. But I do get a bit sidetracked along the way. So we still offer things like cupcakes, cakes and all those things, but at the moment that's purely for cash flow. That one day I would love to say I don't need to do that anymore and just be selling macarons and loaded cookies, and that's it. I want to be known for just those things, because to me that's in my goal. That's my goal. That's my end goal, is to be known, especially for our macarons. And I look forward to that day, because they're my passion. That lights me up. Cakes and stuff, I stress too much with them. The amount of work that goes into them and the amount of negative feedback you get from your costings and your pricing over that, it keeps me up at night, and I don't like it. So yeah, they're not for me. But I do love making them. I love decorating, that's fun, but I want to be known for my macarons.
Now, you've changed location in the last 6 months, 12 months, from sort of around the back in Chapman Mall to Renmark Ave now. How has that worked out for you?
So I love my little shop in Chapman Mall. That was low overheads, that was easy. Don't lose sleep about paying rent on that one, because it was very affordable. I then had a stint where I wanted to go into the plaza, and that for me was my end game. I was like, yep, I'm in the plaza, I've made it. And I was having a few conversations with people who were like, oh, but the plaza doesn't suit you. Like, that doesn't make sense. And I was like, oh yeah, but it's money. Like, it'll be fine. However, that was not the case. Whilst in there, it was great. However, having to be open from their opening hours 9 to 5 and having to fully staff that, any profit we made went on staffing, to the point where there was no profit, there was only red. And we started to use a lot of our savings to keep the business going. And it was getting to the sticky end where it was time to sign leases and it was time to commit. And I really tried hard to. I really tried to work out how to make it work. But sadly for us, it just wasn't enough. And committing to a 5-year lease with the huge overheads that you do have in there, there was nothing for me to fall back on. If it all went south, if we had another COVID wave, if we had more floods, any of that stuff, there's no support. So you're looking at losing things like your house. And when you're having those conversations with your husband that, oh, look, we could lose our house if this all went bad. That's not, yeah, they were dark days. Yeah, that was a really hard time, because I really thought that was my end game and that was going to be amazing. However, it financially almost ruined Zynski Bakes, because there were still a lot of overheads in the end that I'm still paying off now just to survive. So after all that trauma, we'll call it that, I had to move, because in that little space next to me, lucky for the region, like another cafe had literally opened up 2 doors down. So I was like, oh, well, I can't do that now. I can still be a shop front, but I'm used to having more people coming in, and I want to be open more, and I want to offer more things. So we just drove past. There was a sign in this building's window about for lease. We came and had a look. The landlords were lovely to us. They were kind to Hazel. And at the end of the day, to get through it all, I would just walk. I would walk and walk and walk just to make my decision. Like, do I stay with the plaza? Do I commit to this massive risk? Or do I go with this other building, which, costs roughly a little bit less, but it's a massive, massive space. And I came to the point of kindness. In my heart, I wanted to be around people that were kind. And my current landlords now in this new space, they showed me nothing but kindness. And I was like, done. Like, at the end of the day, they were kind to me, my husband, Hazel, and they've still shown us nothing but kindness when we've had weeks where I'm like, oh, rent might be a little bit late. No worries, that's fine. Like, we understand. They've been beautiful. You wouldn't get that anywhere else. And that's why I'm still grateful that we made this decision. And yes, this space is massive. It is so big. Like, yes, I do have some sleepless nights over how big this space is, and obviously with the bigger space you pay more rent. However, I know it was the right decision because at the time it showed me kindness, and that is one of my biggest values. So I know eventually it's all going to work out.
You have had a few things thrown at you, which you sort of touched on before, aside from, I guess, as you said, trauma with the other locations. We've had COVID, we've had the floods. It's taken the region a while to get back on its feet. How have you got through all of that?
COVID, we were in a space where we just turned to online, and I had a food truck, so that was okay. I didn't have as many overheads, didn't matter. It was like, oh well, if this works, it doesn't matter if I don't make any money this time. Then when the floods were on, I hustled. I worked so hard, and sadly that put me out of any funding, so no flood grant funding, none of that, because I earned the same amount as I had previously earned. So no support for that, but that's okay. I should have done nothing and I would have got 10 grand, but that's okay. It's not in me to do it like that, but that's okay. So that was another kick in the guts because I was like, oh, maybe, no support. And then now in this new space with interest rates, financial crisis looming, I know the region is struggling again because we're struggling too. Like, we have a mortgage and everything like that, and it's hard at the moment. And I understand that the first thing to go are luxury items like macarons. No one's buying macarons right now. And I'm grateful for those people that still are. But I understand, like, you don't go, when you work out your pay, you're like, there's nothing left at the end of the week. And I understand fully. So in my head at the moment to get through all of this is if I can survive this and I can survive that, I can survive anything else that's coming, because it'll be okay. No matter what, I'll work hard enough to make it work. It's just a little bit scary sometimes, but just got to have that positive attitude going, you know what, I can get through this. I got through that, so it's going to be okay. And we'll just keep fighting.
And you've got that end goal of that world domination of the macaron market.
Yeah, that's it. My goal is to have our macarons everywhere. I want my face to be recognisable. I want them to go, that's a Zynski Bakes macaron, I need to buy those. I want them everywhere. So slowly we are starting to get our name out there a little bit more with the wholesale market and popping up a few more places in Adelaide, which is awesome. We've also started our online course for macarons, which is selling pretty well and gives people the opportunity to make what we make here in their own homes, because our recipe has been tested that many times to make sure that it does not fail. So that is also another avenue of income for us as well, that's keeping it ticking over as well. But I just want to be known everywhere for really good macarons, because our macarons really are the best.
You mentioned that you wanted, your face recognised for the macarons. Is that part of your, like, you've got the bright orange hair, is that a part of your look, your brand? Have you worked to come up with that?
100%. In the industry, it is, you want to stand out. If that's who you want to be, that's who I want to be. Someone that is recognisable and someone that is trustworthy, someone that is seen as approachable and friendly, because you don't just buy, when you buy a macaron, you're not just buying that, you're buying my brand as well. Like, you're coming to me because you like me, because I'm kind, I'm nice, I'm friendly, and you trust me. And that's why you're spending all your money on me, because I provided you with both a product and a service that is pleasant. And yep, my hair is a strategic strategy in my brand. that's why everyone's like, oh, you should dye it this colour. I'm like, no, orange is my brand. That is who I am. And it is something that people recognise me in the streets going, oh, you're that Zynski Bakes. And that's what happens when I'm in Adelaide now. People are starting to go, oh, you're her. And that's what I want it for. That's what it's about. So when you see me, you see that, oh, yep, she's everything that is her brand, Zynski Bakes, bright, colourful, loud, and also fun.
Have you done a lot of courses or had mentors, or what sort of helped you really fine-tune that brand and your goals and what Zynski Bakes is?
So that's a really good question. So I guess with my brand, I was lucky to have the training in graphics, and I was supported along the way by Maggie. She's from Adelaide Bakes, and which we didn't realise afterwards how similar my name was when ice machine again, sorry. How similar my name was, Adelaide Bakes, Zynski Bakes, whoops. But yeah, she's been a great mentor to me and supported me in all the basics when I first started. But then as it's grown, I'm reaching out further and further to try to understand more and more about actual proper financials, proper branding and support. However, all these things come at a massive cost. So you really have to think about what it is that you want and what you want to get out of a coach, for example, or a mentor. So I've looked at a few areas and I'm in a few different groups and things like that. However, I still personally haven't found the right one for me. Being a product-based business, it's really hard to find a coach that understands the wholesale market and understands how to sell your product. Lots of coaches out there are for coaches, for personal branding, for wellness, all those things. And they're brilliant at what they do. However, for product-based business, it's tricky to find someone that understands you. And you really want to make sure you find the right one, because for a coach, you're paying anywhere up to $400 an hour just to talk to them, up to $1,500 an hour just to talk to them. So you really want to make sure you're making the right decision. And I found through some of these groups, I'm a part of like the 7 Effect and I'm part of Business Mums Hub. The best thing about those is the community that you get from going there. So now when I go to Adelaide, I have a group of about 50, 60 women who will support me no matter what I choose to do. I can message them, I tell them I'm coming, they order so much stock from me, they hear about markets, they hear about opportunities, and they message me. And that's where the village stuff is really important. You really need a community around you, especially in the Riverland. It's really lonely. Everyone's hustling, everyone's working. You've got really no one to talk to about it. And so it gets to the point where just having these people on the side, you can just send a message, hey, I'm flat today. Hey, this opportunity's come about. What do you think about this? It's nice to have that, because it does get lonely and you don't really want to keep paying money all the time to talk to a coach because you're lonely, because, you know, their time is money. And they do care, like, don't get me wrong, they're very valuable, but sometimes you just don't have that money.
Was that difficult to start with, to, you know, pay out that money, that make that investment in yourself and your business?
Definitely. Some of the courses I've paid to go to are 4,000 plus, 8,000 plus. Luckily, they offer payment plans. So if that's something you're interested in, ask them, because they do offer those, because that kind of money is insane. I look back sometimes and I think, do I regret doing that? And the answer is always no, because no matter what, at the end of the day, it's provided me with a connection that is then placed an order, which I've then made that money back anyway. So you just really need to research. And if you know someone that has gone to one of these courses that you're looking at, talk to them, reach out to them, ask them the questions, because you need to know if it's financially viable for you, and make that decision based on you, not just because of the hype around it and all that stuff, because the hype is exciting, it's addictive. However, if you're not going to get your money's worth, then they're not worth it. You really just need to look into it. And you might need to travel as well. It might just be Adelaide, there's some in Sydney, like Huggle and all them, like Jumbled and all them guys, like their stuff's pretty cool too, but you have to travel. So you've got to factor that all into as to what you want to invest in that.
You mentioned that being in business, particularly up here in the Riverland, can get lonely. We've talked about the tough times. How do you keep yourself positive when you get a fair bit thrown at you?
That is a great question. Some nights I struggle a lot with that. I have turned to walking. I know it sounds silly, but I just walk with no music, no nothing, no noise, until I come back with a reset mind. I have a few friends that I talk to who are going through the same thing that help me out mentally as well. I'm very lucky I have a very supportive husband who can help me flip my thinking. And some days it's really hard to flip my mind and I'm just going to retire, like quit this and go straight back into teaching because that's safe, that's easy, I can do that. But usually the next day I just sleep on it and I wake up in a much better mood. But yeah, I do have to do some physical exercise, walking, whatever that is, listen to music on my own. And I need to talk it through, but to the right person, because sometimes I've got friends that are like, keep going. I've got other friends that are like, yeah, quit, go back to teaching, that makes sense. And then, so you've got to find the right community that you need to talk to when you're in those low moments, because it's hard. And you know what? You need to look back on what you've done. I will sit there and just scroll through what I've done on my Instagram and everything that I've achieved over the years, and it's like something to be really proud of. We forget that where we've come, it's massive. We've done so many awesome things, but just because we feel a bit low or our bank account's low for that, like an hour of that day, you're like, I'm useless. This is horrible. I can't do this anymore. I'm a terrible person. So you really need to just start focusing on the positives that you get in your day, and they might be tiny. Like right now, I'm doing this podcast. It's a massive thing. Like that's an awesome positive thing. And I will journal about that later because I need to remember these things. I listen to lots of positive podcasts. Like at the moment, my favourite is The Diary of a CEO. He just gets it. And when you listen to him, you're like, oh, I'm not crazy. That's what everyone thinks of. Entrepreneurs, that makes sense. Yes, okay, I think like that too. And so just having those kind of things in your mind as well, that you go, all right, I'm not crazy. I've got this. It's going to be okay. And focusing on the positives that you get in your day, in your week, in your year is something to stop you from going too far batshit crazy.
So what's next for Zynski Bakes?
Next for Zynski Bakes, this is the goal. So I want my macarons to be everywhere. I want to be known for that, and I want this cafe space to be a destination where people come because they want to see, like, you know, when you go to Adelaide Market and you see Poe working in the back there, like, that is so cool. I want that. Like, Poe's obviously a completely different level of what I'm at, but as in just people that go there because they want to experience what you're selling, and that is what I want. And I want my classes, when I teach people how to make macarons and those things, I want them to be super busy and super enjoyable and super loved, which they have been so far. I just want to do more of them because I love teaching. But obviously, again, at this time of the year, it's a bit crazy. So I want to be known as the macaron queen. Step aside, Zumbo, I'm coming. And I want people to come here just to experience that.
What's next for Hayley away from Zynski Bakes?
Is there a Hayley without Zynski Bakes? No, I want to be able to have this business, and I want it to be, I love travelling. I love working away from home. It sounds silly, but I love going away to, say, a caravan park or the beach, and I've got my laptop and I'm still working on things, but I'm away. I want to be able to have my business to be operational without me, but I still, control freak, have to be somewhat involved. But my goal is to travel. I just want to be able to go wherever I want, whenever I want, and this still works.
That's Hayley Pokorzynski. You can find her on Instagram at Zynski Bakes. You can also follow this podcast on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening to Riverland Women.